Welcome to Vigorous Nutrition. I'm Coach Steve. Let's talk about cheat meals, refeeds, and how to incorporate them because a lot of people are still not really sure when to cheat and when to refeed. So let's just go over it. First things first, let's tackle the off-season. When you're in a chronic caloric surplus, you don't really need to refeed because a refeed is done to replenish glycogen stores and increase leptin levels when you've been in a calorie deficit for a while. Your glycogen stores slowly get lower and lower and lower, and then you do a refeed to replenish glycogen stores and increase your leptin levels a little bit so body fat is easier to release. So when you're in the off season, you're always eating in a calorie surplus, so you don't really need to refeed. And when you transition from a cutting phase or contest prep into the off season, by reverse dieting, you slowly increase the calories throughout the week. You keep those refeeds in the weekend the same. Well, we'll get to that a little bit later. You keep your refeeds in the weekend the same, and then you bring your calories during the week slowly up until they match. So let's say you've been dieting on 2,500 calories. Your weekend refeeds are 4,000, for example. You bring your calories during the week up slowly with 10% increases. So 2,500, 2,750, 3,100, 3,500, slow incremental steps until you eat the same amount of calories during the week as you do during the refeed on a Saturday or a Sunday, for example. So when you've been chronically eating, in a little calorie surplus, maybe 5%, 10% over maintenance, it's not that much, but you grow into this caloric surplus so steadily. And the last thing you want is to eat in a calorie surplus that's too much for the amount of muscle that you can gain in that window of time. Because the more you eat, the fatter you're going to get. And you only can put on so much muscle tissue at the same time. So just increase the calories, 10% increases. And when you stop making progress, you can increase it a little bit more. When you get into the refeeds, in the beginning of your off season, you might still want to do a refeed in the weekend because you're not chronically saturated with glycogen stores. But at one point, you don't need to refeed anymore because you're always in a caloric surplus. You're always eating a lot. You're probably losing your appetite, when you reach 4,000, 5,000 calories per day. So at that point, you don't need to refeed anymore because you're always saturated with glycogen stores and your leptin levels are going to be nice and low because, you're storing a little bit of body fat as well. So there's no metabolic stress. Your metabolic rate should be high enough just to burn calories, burn body fat if that's, the case if you train in the morning or do a little bit of morning fasted cardio. Refeeds are out the window in the off season, but you can still do a cheat meal. So, let's say in the weekend it's your birthday. Okay, go have a cheat meal. Let's say it's your girlfriend's birthday or your boyfriend's birthday. You go have a cheat meal. Make sure it's in a social setting because you don't really need it because you're always in a calorie surplus. Yeah? So a cheat meal is just basically something you do for social setting. In the meantime, you always make sure you get your adequate protein in, you get enough carbohydrates in to fuel the workouts, give you enough energy throughout the day, and you get enough fat for recovery, hyperplasia, and overall sense of well-being and hormonal function. So you get all your nutrients in, and you have a cheat meal on top. That's the scenario for the off-season. Now, the other side, when you do a contest prep or cutting phase, let's say you start at 5,000 calories and you slowly bring those down with 10% increases or decreases, then the refeeds over the weekend are going to go up because the longer you diet, the more glycogen depleted you get, especially at lower body fat levels, because usually as you get leaner, you gain more muscle in the meantime, right? Because, if you're on cycle or, any kind of performance enhancing drugs, usually you gain a little bit of size and metabolic rate in the meantime. So as your calories go down, the hole gets a lot bigger and bigger and bigger as you go along in the diet. And the refeeds are going to be bigger and bigger and bigger as well to replenish glycogen stores. So in the beginning of let's say the first 4 weeks of the diet, you go from 5,000 or 4,000 calories down to 3,500, for example, during the week. One cheat meal might be enough. On Saturday, you do one cheat meal, you re-glycogenate the muscle, increase your leptin levels enough for a couple more days of fat loss, and you're good. You don't lose any strength. You don't lose any size. You're probably still progressing, size and strength-wise, because you have a decent amount of body fat to cover for it. Now, at one point, you start to get leaner and leaner and leaner, and you notice that your body fat stores in certain areas, like around your waist, underneath your chest, your glutes, your face, Some people store fat in their face. I do too now, but it's off season for me. So, yeah, a little bit of chunk on the cheeks. No big deal. So as you notice, when you're dieting, you get leaner and leaner and leaner. You get some stubborn body fat stores, right? And you'll have to force those off. The first step of doing that is taking the cheat meals out. Because when you take a cheat meal, you have no idea how many calories, how many saturated fats, how much additives, whether you have ice cream or cookies or whatever. I mean, a cheat meal is it's pretty all-encompassing. So I'm not really sure which cheat meal you prefer and you're going to have. So for me, it's usually hamburgers or sushi. Still reasonably clean. But other people like, 4 cheeses pizza and a bucket of ice cream. And your body's going to respond differently to all this fat from the cheese and the ice cream compared to having a reasonably clean cheat meal like sushi or hamburgers. Depending on where you get your hamburgers. I prefer the gourmet hamburgers with real meat, not this mystery meat they have at the fast food chains. So, gourmet hamburger, nice sushi, that's a clean cheat meal. And a dirty cheat meal is like a 5 cheeses pizza and or with a lot of sausages and ice cream, which has no nutritional value besides calories, basically. So, choose your cheat meals wisely because some of them are going to prevent you from losing body fat at certain areas, and other ones are basically the food you've been eating throughout your contest prep or your cutting phase. You're just in a caloric surplus, and you still get a lot of micronutrients for the amount of calories that you get during that cheat meal. So at one point, I have to cut the cheat meals out. 8% body fat, 6% body fat. It really depends on the person and how many times they've, got shredded before. If you never got shredded before, you're probably going to have to cut the cheat meals out from the beginning because your body has to go through the process. You eat clean 6 days a week. 1 day you refeed. And you refeed on the foods that you've been having throughout your diet because that's what your digestive system is used to. So let's say you've been dieting on salmon, beef, chicken, eggs, and rice as your sole carb source, and maybe a little bit of fruit or oatmeal. Okay, you carb up or you refeed on rice, fruit, and oatmeal. You're not going to refeed on sweet potato because your body's not used to it. Your body doesn't know how to process it. And the longer you go through your cutting phase or contest prep, the less likely your body will be able to process it. So I've seen a lot of guys make this mistake. They diet on oatmeal, for example, or they diet on rice, and then they carb load before the contest on sweet potato. Your body has no idea what to do with it. So carb load or refeed on food you've been having throughout prep, throughout your cutting phase. So if you've been eating rice, okay, you carb up on rice. You have, instead of 100 grams or 200 grams that you have during the week, you have 500, 600, 700 grams of rice. Again, it's very person specific, and it's going to increase the longer you diet. So let's say you start dieting, you have a sushi cheat meal for the first 4 weeks, and then that doesn't work anymore because you're not losing fat off the stubborn fat areas. Okay, you change the sushi to a clean refeed throughout the day, maybe 500 grams of rice. It's 400 carbs. Yeah? Now you're losing some of the sugar from the sushi that it's the sushi rice is a little bit of sugar. The soy sauce is a little bit of sugar. You get a little bit of fat in whatever roll you choose. So there's always a little bit of a change. So you go from this cheat meal to these clean refeeds, and now you have to micromanage your electrolytes, whatever else a carbohydrate source you get on top. Because rice is just rice. Yeah, it doesn't have so much potassium. It doesn't have so much sodium. And the good thing about a sushi cheat meal is that it's full with sodium, which helps to deliver nutrients to muscle tissue because sodium saturates the blood. The blood has water, which holds all the nutrients, and then it can go into the muscle tissue. But when you go from sushi to clean rice, you'll need to supplement electrolytes on top because they're not contained much within the rice itself. Rice is reasonably low in potassium. It's devoid of sodium. And if you're going to do a refeed, you'll have to manage your electrolytes. I know you're already going to ask me how much sodium, how much potassium. A good ratio of sodium to potassium during a carb load is maybe 3-to-1. So 3 times the amount of potassium to sodium. You can compare that with the daily recommended intakes. Potassium is 4,700 milligrams and sodium is 1,500 milligrams, or 3 times less than the potassium. Maybe 10 milligrams per 1 gram of carbs. Yeah? You consume 10 milligrams of potassium for every gram of carb you refeed with. Because you've been depleted and you probably lost your glycogen stores by the time you refeed, so you lost a lot of potassium as well. That's why usually the day before you refeed, or as a method to judge when you need to refeed, is that the night before or several days before you start peeing your brains out at night. Because you have nothing to retain water. Your glycogen levels are depleted, your sodium doesn't hold that much, and now the potassium is also being released from the released glycogen store. So you're just peeing your brains out when you sleep. That's usually the good time to refeed the next day or maybe 2 days later. Again, you'll have to see about how much training intensity you can still bring to the table and how much body weight you lost. Because if you lose 2 or 3 kilos of body weight overnight, some of that is glycogen, some of that is electrolytes, and some of that is water, I don't think your training intensity is going to be that high. It's a significant drop. And on the other side of that, your refeed is successful if you only gained 1 or 2 kilos the next day. Because beyond that, it's just water. And water doesn't bring anything to the table. Unless you're in the off-season and then a little bit of padding is warranted. But the whole purpose of a refeed is to replenish glycogen stores. So let's say you carb up on 500 grams of carbs. You have 5,000 milligrams of potassium to drive that or to store that as muscle glycogen. And you use 1/3 of the potassium to sodium. So that's 1,600 milligrams at least. Maybe 2,000 milligrams because you sweat a little bit. I'm sweating now. Just sitting here. It's hot. And my metabolic rate is high. So you lose a little bit of sodium anyway. So let's say you carb load on 500 carbs, 5,000 milligrams of potassium, and 2,000 milligrams of sodium. All that sodium is going to deliver the glycogen or the glucose to your muscle tissue, and the potassium is going to help you to store it. So if you've stored 500 grams of carbs as muscle glycogen, you pulled another 500 to 1,000 milliliters of water into the muscle to hydrate it, and because storing glycogen brings a little bit of water into the intracellular space, you gain 1.5 kilos of body weight. But keep in mind, everybody knows when you go flat, you get watery, right? So as glycogen storage goes down, your body is going to hold a certain amount of water anyway. And when you're glycogen loaded, part of that water is in the muscle cell. And when you deplete your glycogen levels, part of that water is going to spill over into the subcutaneous space or the extracellular space, between the muscle fibers or the skin fibers or whatever. Let's say your water budget that you're going to hold, whether that's in the intracellular space with glycogen or the extracellular space when you're flat, when you're glycogen depleted, let's say it's 5 kilos. Now, you can spread that 5 kilos all over your body when you're depleted. And now you look watery and flat and soft and there's no definition. But you can take that 5 kilos and put that right back into the muscle by carb load. You don't even need to drink water for that, which is still recommended. Yeah? The last thing you want is to get constipated. So you can use some of the glycogen to pull water from the subcutaneous space into the muscle cell. So if you carb load correctly, your body weight shouldn't change, especially when you get leaner. You hold a little bit of water in the, in the stubborn fat areas because that's how the body works. Stubborn fat areas get all the water, you look even worse. A carb load will reset everything. It pulls some of the subcutaneous water into the intramuscular space because you're storing glycogen with potassium. This way you look leaner, you look drier, you look fuller, and now you look ultimately better. But the weight probably didn't change much. Maybe you even lost a kilo because you hold so much subcutaneous water. A little bit of stress, from the cardio. You've been dieting for a long time. And then a refeed of 500 grams of carbs from rice or oatmeal or sweet potato or whatever you've been having during your cutting phase. It's just going to bring the cortisol way down. Probably that day you didn't do cardio because why do cardio when you're refeeding, right? You can still do a workout. But, it's kind of pointless to do cardio on the day you're refeeding. Unless you do it fasted before you start refeeding. But the last thing you want to do is You start planning, you have 4 meals, and then at the end of the day, you do cardio. What's the point? You're just burning away glycogen. Yeah? You want that glycogen in the muscle so you can sustain another week of training, or 5 days, or 8 days, or whenever you start peeing your brains out, because it could be between 5 days and 8 days. And now I'm jumping all over the place. This is the troubleshooting mindset of a coach. You go from here, until you figure it out. So you're probably going to have to decipher this video so you can set it up for yourself. So let's just recap it a little bit. When you start dieting, you start to get more depleted. As you get more depleted during the week, your body fats levels are going down. Your refeeds need to increase to replenish these glycogen stores and increase leptin levels. So your body doesn't hold on to these stubborn fat areas. So you increase leptin levels by the refeeding. And then as your metabolic rate increases, you're probably on more and more PEDs to create the anabolism. At one point, the trenbolone is coming into the play. Yeah, it increases your metabolic rate, which means you're going to deplete faster. And even though the androgenicity and the anabolism of the increased PED intake is going to increase strength, increase size, increase muscle mass, you're digging the hole deeper into the glycogen stores to the point you get reasonably flat, especially when you use masterone, which has a diuretic effect. You just get flatter and flatter and flatter as your diet continues. And that's why most people should be ready at 3 or 4 weeks out. They can cut the cardio. They can slowly grow and reglycogenate the muscle, refill out, take away all this stress and the thyroid medication and the excess cardio to get lean. And then they slowly fill out and look nice, full, and round on stage, which is, for the majority of you, you're never going to reach that point. But if you do, at one point, you just slowly carb up into the show. And that's probably a topic for a whole other video. So let's just keep it to refeeds. Golden rule is you refeed on the foods you've been eating. Yeah, you don't, just don't do. What I do is I do a ketogenic diet. So I have no carbs during the week, but I refeed on the same foods every weekend. Bread and rice. That works well for me. Oatmeal doesn't work. Oatmeal doesn't work because it doesn't contain yeast, because it's not pre-digested. And bread, of course, contains yeast, especially the sourdough bread that I have. It's pre-digested. I can digest it. Yeah. The yeast, the probiotic yeast, helps to digest the carbohydrate source for me before I eat it. And then when I eat it, I don't get any of the gastrointestinal upset that I would otherwise get with oatmeal. Rice, the same thing. Cook it overnight. It's always fresh. No resistant starches. That's also something you got to look out for. I carb up on the same foods every week. During the week, I might have a little bit of fruit. Yes, I eat fruit on a ketogenic diet. Don't lecture me about fructose, please. I'm a coach. I know what I'm doing. Ketogenic throughout the week. In the weekend, I refeed. Yeah, I go have 1 or 2 cheat meals, and I refeed a little bit of clean carbs in between. It works for me. It has always worked for me like this. I might cut the cheat meals out a couple weeks before, as I want to get leaner and lose a little bit of the body fat on the stubborn areas. But so far, whether it's on season or off season, eat clean throughout the week. I still create a little bit of a deficit because I'm on a ketogenic diet. And then I refeed pretty hard over the weekend. And for you, you'll have to see what you eat. You'll have to see how much potassium you get, how much sodium you get, and how depleted you are at the end of the week. So for most people, for me, myself included, a refeed on Saturday or Sunday is the easiest way to schedule it, because the weekend is usually the time where you take a break from work. It's usually the time where everybody's going out and socialize. So that's the perfect time to eat something that's not on your bodybuilding meal plan. And if you want to refeed and you're a full-time bodybuilder and you completely forego the social aspect of eating, you refeed when you're depleted. Could be 8 days, could be 12 days, could be 5 days. And it highly depends on what you're doing and how much performance enhancers you're taking. Because if you're on a thyroid meds, 2 hours of cardio, trenbolone, IGF-1, or anything else that speeds up your metabolic rate, maybe you load up on 1,000 carbs and 5 days later you're depleted again. And you'll know right away because one night you're spending the whole night on the toilet because you're peeing. Everything is out. There's no glycogen to hold the water. You're just urinating like you took a diuretic, but it's your glycogen stores are depleted. And that's a key signal of your body, like, okay, I have nothing to hold it. You lose 1 kilo or 2 kilos or maybe even 3 kilos overnight, and it's time to load up. It could be every 5 days. Maybe the first day of carb loading, when your metabolism is sped up so much, maybe the first day of carb loading, it doesn't even stick. You're still peeing your brains out. Your body weight went down even more because you're holding a little bit of the subcutaneous space. You look a little bit leaner, a little bit fuller. This is usually the case towards the end of a prep, when you start carb loading for a bodybuilding show. The first day of carb loading, you're completely depleted. You were a little bit flat, or pretty flat, and you were pretty watery. Start carb loading, you look better, but you drop weight. You carb load a second day. Now you probably maintain weight. And then the third day, the weight goes up. Sometimes you even need a fourth day. It depends on how depleted you were and if you were able to stop your contest or cutting phase a few weeks before you get on stage or you do your photo shoot, allowing you to fill out again and taper off the cardio and maybe taper off the thyroid meds and whatever other PEDs you're taking. I know you guys want me to give you a clear answer, but it's so circumstantial and it makes it very, very hard. The only real takeaway I could say is if you want to really store your glycogen efficiently, make sure you get around 10 milligrams, maybe even 50 milligrams of potassium per 1 gram of carb. And remember that sweet potato or banana or watermelon is loaded with potassium, but oatmeal and rice doesn't have so much potassium. So or bread even, if you carb load on certain sources, you might need to supplement potassium on top. And most food sources that are unprocessed have, peanuts amount of sodium. And if you don't like sodium, add a pickle. Pickles are loaded with sodium. I've had a couple guys that are, so paranoid about sodium, but they don't know that there's a lot of sodium in pickles. So you tell them, okay, the secret to carb loading is you cook your rice in coconut water, which has the same electrolyte balance as your body does. Same amount of potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium, and phosphorus, I think. Similar ratio to your body. So you add that to rice. Now it has the same electrolyte balance as your body, and your body can process the rice. Gets a little bit of sugar on top for insulin release. Then you want a little bit more potassium and maybe a little bit more sodium on top. Okay, you tell them, hey, a banana and a pickle in between rice meals. Because you got to trick these guys because they're too OCD to take sodium. So you tell them a banana and the pickle in between meals. And at the end of the day, they get another 3,000 milligrams of potassium and maybe 1,000 milligrams of sodium. There's nutrition, there's many things to play with. And ideally, you keep a log. I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. The only real way to keep track of all the variables in your progress and how your body responds to the minute changes and minute adjustments you made is by keeping a log. So let's say you do a refeed. You gained 3 kilos, or 5% of your body weight, for example. That's too much. It's too much. You should have gained 1.5 kilos, maybe 2. Maybe 2 if you're a big guy. If you dropped weight, okay, that's great. You probably can do another carb load. So if you gain too much, okay, you go through your list. What did I do? Was it too much sodium? Did I take too much creatine? Did I get my hands dirty with 100 milligrams of anadrol because I wanted to improve that carbohydrate loading? All these little things you take a log of. And then you throw your list. For the next refeed, you're like, okay, maybe you'll reduce a little bit of sodium, take the anadrol out, carb load on a different source that I've been having throughout the week. This time I'm only going to carb load on rice because I've been eating rice on my diet. And I'm only going to add a little bit of salmon and beef for the healthy fats, but not too much fat that I risk losing insulin sensitivity. Because that's the problem with cheat meals. If you go for like a very fatty cheat meal and there's all this triglycerides in your blood, and then your body's like, no thanks. And insulin sensitivity goes down. Now you just get fat. Your muscles don't want to take it. And then it spills over to the body fat stores. Man, you guys are going to have a hard time deciphering this. I got details articles about carb loading, refeeding, cheat meals, insulin sensitive. I got it all in the group. And as a coach, people come to me with a certain scenario, and I know how to answer that. But if you want to make a video about it, it's so broad that it completely loses its track. So that's what happened. I'm sure this video is going to lead to a lot of questions. But in the end, you have to go by your log and make the correct, or what you think is the correct adjustments for the next week, and keep practicing and practicing and practicing until you find a formula where you carb load without spilling over, where you carb load where you look better 3 days, 4 days in succession. Yeah, so every day you look a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And then it's up to you not to push it too far, because 1% better usually means 20% worse. Yeah, so you want to be 95% carb loaded, not 101% carb loaded, because that 1% is going to go to your subcutaneous space, and now you're spilled over, watery, and you don't look as good in pictures. You might still win the show, depends who shows up. You never know, maybe you may get lucky. Maybe you fucked up, but you still get lucky. Once you figure out the formula where you carb load or you refeed on foods that you've been ingesting, there's no gastrointestinal upset, everything passes through, there's no constipation, you eat, you fill out. Once you figure that out, you're untouchable. It's that simple. Now you just have to go through the monotony, because eating every hour, 1.5 hours, these little bowls, little Tupperware bowls of a little bit of rice and a little bit of white fish and maybe a vegetable or two, it's very, very boring. But it works. It works. It's I should be doing it too, but I like the cheat meals. I like to go out to a restaurant and look at the menu and just 1, 2, 3, boom, done. Don't care about caloric intake, don't care about micronutrient intake. Half a day a week, I take my vacation from bodybuilding, because when you coach and personal train and do consultations and talk about bodybuilding on YouTube and study bodybuilding journals and studies, okay, half a day a week, it's enough. I go for my cheat meal. I'm a normal person. During prep, you got to put all your cards into one basket. You got to refeed clean to take the stubborn body fat off. You got to invest, suffer a little bit, just to get that beautiful, beautiful picture in that first place trophy. It is what it is, and then you can cheat as hard as you want afterwards. One day, guys. Don't. I've seen it happen too many times. You start eating, and you turn into the Michelin Man. All right. I hope it sent you guys in the right direction. Sorry, it's so completely incoherent, but it's hard to really go over carb loading when it's completely varied. And it could be all over the place. Some people don't even eat the carb load. They never get flat. They never get depleted. It is what it is. All right. Hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.